Alright, so I'm making this video, just a real fast video. Well, I mean, I plan for it to be fast. Who knows how long it'll actually be. Just to talk about some, like, general feedback I have for Descenders Next. So far, I gotta say, the most enjoyment I've had is kind of similar to the most enjoyment I get out of Descenders, which is crazy high-speed stuff like this. I like that, even though that wasn't really intended as part of the track. I have fun with that. Maybe will I? Yeah, there we go. I gotta say, I love how the snowboard handles. It really feels good to play. I'm not as big of a fan of the mountainboard. The mountainboard, it feels a little too stiff. And I get it, you know, realistically, that makes sense. But then, like, whenever you compare it to Descenders, the way the bike handles in Descenders already just, like, is very silly. So it makes sense that it should be a little unrealistic, you know, for the mountainboard. At least that's just my thought on the as a whole. One thing I really don't like about the mountainboard, like, I can live with the fact that the controls are a little stiffer, you know, makes sense physically, I suppose, in the context of the game. But one thing that I don't like is that you don't build up as much speed with the mountainboard. It's actually kind of crazy how much of a difference there is in the speed that you get between snowboarding and mountainboarding. Like, it's pretty easy to get up to, you know, 50 kilometers per hour plus. In fact, it's really easy to get to like 100. I mean, whenever you're off course. On course, it's pretty hard most of the time. That's another thing, is, like, I kind of wish you guys would lean more into the high-speed stuff on some tracks. I do like that there are more handcrafted destinations in this. Like, there's, you know, multiple handcrafted parks around here. And I do like that. I think that I did end up spending a lot of time in the bike parks in Descenders. So I think having more handcrafted experiences to add on to the procedural gen is good. Also, you know, one thing that's a complaint I have so far is I wish that there was more. I mean, you see a lot of these interesting stunt elements on the handcrafted courses that just don't show up at all, seemingly. From what I've encountered so far on the randomly generated courses, which is kind of sad. That was weird. And I don't know if that's just a thing that's going to change as the game is released. Maybe there's some kinks you're working out or something, or I don't know. But I kind of wish that there were some more stunts that you could find. Also, you know, I feel like one thing that I find disappointing is that the games lean a little bit too hard into the realism, which I know is, like, kind of the goal here. But it's a little disappointing whenever you can do crazy shit. And I mean, you know, there's obviously a lot of fantastical stuff going on because, like, you know, it's a video game. You already have the benefit of being able to perform as, like, a superhuman, essentially. Or, you know, you're pro plus when it comes to your skill level upon the board. But I think that you should kind of go all in on the fact that it is a video game. Because you could go for some really cool, like, fantasy sort of tile sets and some cool stunts, like maybe have have a variant of the grind rail that's just like a floating like stream of water that you can just like board across. It does like a cool particle effect. Have like tile sets for like, you know, maybe like a Mayan temple or something kind of cool like that. Like Ollie Ollie 2. I don't know about Ollie Ollie 1 because I haven't played that one. But Ollie Ollie 2 and Ollie Ollie World kind of leaned into the fantastical a little bit, and I think that makes for like some very memorable design. I think it's kind of a mistake not to, whenever you have the opportunity, like, right there. I mean, it would be some extra work to develop the, you know, assets and the tile set, or whatever you want to call it. But I think that ultimately, the benefits you would receive from doing it would be really good. Because, for example, in the first Descenders game, one of the parks that I really enjoyed the most was the Lost Cause Caves. That had a sort of fantastical element to it. There was a few other parks that went a little bit harder on the fantastical elements, and I really like that. It makes you feel like more badass whenever you're doing the stunts and actually going through it. And it's a feast for the eyes, as well as being able to provide an exhilarating experience that you can't get from like a normal sort of sports game. And I get like that the goal here is like to get people hooked on the procedural sort of light roguelike elements and then make them stay for the handcrafted stuff, is kind of how I felt with like the first Descenders game. That's kind of ended up what I played the most. I don't get me wrong, I love the procedural, and it is fun to just kind of go along, but the problem with the procedural stuff is that it could be more advanced. Once you've played like a certain threshold of hours, you'll just recognize the same sort of setups. You'll notice that like certain set pieces don't really appear much on the random generated levels. Also, the fact that the parks have multiple paths through them that you can board down that are all very obviously curated to sort of interplay with each other if you want, that isn't present in the randomly generated levels. And I know that would be difficult to do, but I think not having it at least try, or at least strive to do something like that, is kind of like missing out. Now, one thing I have noticed here that I'm sort of excited for, I haven't seen a ton of it or noticed a ton of it in the actual levels, but there's a lot more assets for off-roaders, which is great for me, because in Descenders, there wasn't all that much to do off-road. I like that there's actual stunt elements off-road now. You don't have to like choose, like make your own fun by like finding random things that you can do funny flips off of and stuff anymore. And like, while you still can do that, I guess, it's not like the only way to have fun out in the sticks. Oops. So I think overall, what I want to see in Descenders next, I'm not expecting it to be in the base game when it launches, because, I mean, I really don't think they have any sort of fantasy tile set planned at this point, or any sort of, you know, interesting high concept, maybe not high concept, I don't think that's the right word, but you know, nothing in that sort of sphere of thought seems to be present. Or else, if it is, their marketing team is doing a horrible job, because that's the stuff that you'd want to show off first, really. Because that's how you get more people. Instead of just the extreme sports game players, you could get a hold of other sort of game enjoyers. If they see that you're doing something unique, then you're going to get a wider audience. It's sort of like, you know, if someone showed me a game, they're like, here's a snowboarding game, but your guy has a sword, and you can snowboard through crazy courses while fighting monsters, and, like, he'll fight on his own, you just have to, like, steer and make sure he doesn't die. Then I'd be like, oh, that's a very interesting game concept. That's just something I kind of pulled out of my ass, because I'm on a snowboard, and I also play a lot of roguelikes, but... You know, you want to, like, if you have, like, the more unique of a concept you have, I feel like the more that you can just get people to be like, oh, interesting. That's a neat-looking game. I want to see what's going on. And so I think being able to expand into the fantasy tile set, or that's, you know, I guess just what I'm calling it now, being able to expand into something like that would benefit you as a whole, I think, as a game, and I mean probably as a studio, to get more recognition for doing something that kind of pushes the boundaries. So far, I mean, I appreciate that there's been a lot more work put into multiple handcrafted locations, and I'm like, hell yeah, more of that, please. I'm a little sad the procedural generation doesn't seem to have improved at all from Descenders, if I could speak English, from the first Descenders. And I'm a little sad that you're not going balls to the wall with some, like, more interesting concepts, especially after you've had so many years and seen so many maps that people in the community have made that sort of take advantage of more interesting stuff. Some stuff I want to see that's just, like, elements would be... there's a few levels that user-made maps in Descenders that had, like, the full pipes, where you could just do loop-de-loops inside of it, downhill. There's one park in particular I'm thinking of, but I can't remember the name of it. I cannot for the life of me remember the name of that park. But, something like that, you know... It's like one of those things that, like, it wouldn't really... It works great in a park setting, in like a curated setting where, like, you can have the cool tube, and it's like, it's fun to play with on its own, but, like, the biggest, like, what would you call it? The biggest draw to having it is the fact that you could combine it with other elements to curate a more interesting stunt out of it. Kind of like in Lost Cause caves, you go down the twisty plank in the cave on the, what I think is, what I consider the hardest course of Lost Cause caves. And then you kind of emerge out into the bigger cavern with, like, the crystals and stuff. And then you go super fast downhill, and then there's a branching path where you can flip up and try to land on a descending ramp that guides you into another set of caves. And, like, the whole setup for that is, like, very elaborate, obviously. But, like, that's what makes it good, is that it's, like, kind of a combination of different sort of elements. And that's what I think is missing from, like, the procedural generation, because it feels like a bunch of randomly placed stuff, which, I mean, that's what it is, and, you know. But I feel like you could make some, like, more procedural elements of, like, you can block together some stunts and things like that. You know what would be interesting is if you hosted a community event where you just, like, have people make these elaborate, like, stunt setups. I feel like that would be fun. And then you can, like, choose a bunch of them to be like, here's the winners, and, like, you can have their name attached to it as, like, a preset for people to make for their, like, custom levels. Oh, yeah, custom level builder. That's another thing that, like, really needs to be fleshed out and added in. And then also for use in the procedural generation as, like, more elaborate setups that you can find on courses. I think that being able to, like, have a wealth of experience... whoops, I don't know what I was doing there. a wealth of like different ideas and things coming in would make the procedural generation more interesting if you can figure out ways to like implement it effectively. Let's see, what else? What else do I have to say about this game? Oh, one thing that's always bothered me, now that I've just witnessed it again, I feel like you bail a little too hard for a game that feels so good to go fast in. It can be, especially in Descenders 1. This game feels like it got a little bit more generous, or maybe it's just the nature of most of the courses being like consistently downhill, so you can land a lot softer and save long falls more easily. But in Descenders 1 especially, there's a lot of times that you'd go up and do like a double backflip and just be like, well, I guess I'm dead. Because I'm too high in the air and the landing isn't going to be soft enough. And it feels a little disheartening to have that sort of experience in a game where it feels so good to just be like blazing down the track, and you hit that ramp and like you get launched up in the air like crazy high, do a bunch of flips, and then you know you're just gonna die at the end. But like, I mean, I guess if there's a good slope going, you can survive. You can usually figure out a way to eke out a survival if there's a good slope to sort of break your fall. But I kind of wish that you had a little bit more generous of a threshold for like a hard landing bail. Just personally. I do like that you've added the, let's see, hold on, what's it called? The rotation, like this thing? The back roll, that's what it is, the rolls. The rolls are nice. I think they're fun. They do confuse me heavily whenever I sometimes try to do like if I try to do like a 360 roll, I just do a weird little wooble in the air. Which I'm not a huge fan of. You can still do the 360 backflips, right? Yeah, super easy. I tend to keep my tricks kind of simple most of the time, unless I'm like really trying to rack up points. Most of the satisfaction I get from these games is whenever you get into like a really good high-speed situation that you can potentially survive, like in the map I was playing at the beginning here, Narvik. In Narvik, like this feeling of like, you know, just like cutting off to the right here and just going down into the half pipe. That feels so good. Going so fast that like the screen becomes really hard to see, and like you feel like your character is just like bracing for death. I know I am. It feels really good to just like blitz through there. And then, you know, have something to do that's like really cool, like landing in the lake here. That's neat. I like that. It would be really cool if you could like land on top of the water and like ride on top of it for whenever you're going really fast. That would be really neat. I think that there needs to be more like interesting, creative fantasy, not necessarily like fantasy, but like fantasy adjacent, sort of fantastical is more maybe the right word here. Fantastical sort of ideas for like what you can do with these tracks, what sort of stunts you could have in, the different maps that you could have. I'd really love to see, like, you know how Descenders 1 had Career and Career Plus that had the different set of maps for each? I kind of wish that there was you could do a DLC maybe that has like all these fantasy sort of or fantastical type maps, and I think it would be really neat to just from like a perspective of having more content. It's great to have DLC. To offer more. I mean, being able to have a track builder and have community-made tracks and like parks available is really great. I love being able to have that. I really want there to be a more diverse level builder that's like part of the game in this. I think that would be really neat. Can I land this? Almost. I feel like that would be really cool to have a more involved sort of in-game level editor that you could use. You could host competitions and then like use either stunt setup elements or different things to add to the procedural generation, or add new bike parks into the game based on player submissions. You could do a lot of neat stuff with it. I think that's all I have to say. I've kind of been repeating myself a little bit, not gonna lie. Is that all I have to say? Let me go over. I mentioned I want more fantastical stunts and tile sets / areas, perhaps a DLC including all of those together, or an update, you know, one of the two. Preferably an update, but DLC would be acceptable. Yeah, there was no way I was living. Be cool if I could, though. Oh! I have one more idea that I think would be super cool. Okay, now this is like maybe the best idea, but also maybe like the most like, I don't know, out of pocket, I guess. So, okay, one of the coolest things that you could do with this game is like add like some sort of abilities. What do I mean by that? Like, I feel like you should have an equip slot for abilities. That could be like, maybe I jump in the air and I press the ability button and I start gliding like a short distance, or like I hover a little bit. I do like a slow fall, like a feather fall sort of thing, you know? Like lower gravity or something. Any of those names would work to describe it. And I think that... There's no way. I think that you could do a whole bunch of different things. You could do one that's like a speed booster. You could do one that's like a slow fall. What else would be cool? Having like a double jump or like a super jump would be neat. Having a thing that you can press that would just like would save you from a hard bail. If you're not going to make it more generous, you could add an ability to like save yourself with the ability. The slow fall would probably do that, actually. Like, I don't know. I feel like you could think of some interesting things. Being able to like use your snowboard as like a glider, kind of, would be kind of neat. If you like beyond just a slow fall. Oops. Let's see, what else? I don't know, I'm kind of drawing a blank beyond just those two. But I think they would be really fun abilities to have. You could also build some courses around them, even. I mean, you could just make them part of your kit for like moves you can do. Maybe you have like a special sort of gauge that you can either, like if you're in the air and you use the special gauge, it gives you slow fall, and if you're on the ground, it gives you a boost. And you could like build it up by doing stunts to fill up your points, and then like you can activate it to take advantage of it. Yeah, I think, you know what, I maybe just solved my own problem. Since I can't think of any more abilities, you might as well just make them part of your kit, if it's only 2. Would some of the hardcore crowd who only wants to play extreme sports get upset with that? I don't think so. Maybe. If they're really lame and boring people, I guess they would. But I feel like most people would just be like, oh, sick, I have like a booster. Or like, oh shit, I can just like glide and like all the way down this hill. That's super cool. I feel like most people would be on board. I think the fantasy or fantastical, both, either one, I don't fucking know. Sort of parks and tiles and stunts is like a no-brainer to me. Well, to me personally, I feel like everyone would be on board with that. That's just like a cool new like set of courses to run, essentially. Like you could do a bunch of really cool handmade parks, and you could make a procedural set. Make the assets available for level editing, etc. That was an interesting one. I don't know. I think that's it. I've been rambling for a while now. I realize I'm bad about that. I'm a yapper. I'm a rambler, but I think I've completely reached the end of what I can say now. So I'm gonna. Oh, dude, we're in this. Fucking for sure. Well, I'm dead now, but... yeah, I think I've said all I need to say. I'm just repeating myself at this point. The runes idea thing, or the abilities, I think was the last interesting thing I had to add to the conversation. Good one. And now I'm just stuck with the addicting gameplay of crashing over and over after going like 100 miles per hour. So I'm going to end it and then upload this. So, thanks. Anyways, to everyone else who watches my YouTube, hi, sorry it's been a while. Also sorry that I haven't uploaded a new episode for the audiobook. I swear I will finish it at some point. I've just been horribly burnt out. I'll get back to it, I swear, at some point. Hopefully this summer I'll have more time. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Anyways, later.